All right, let's jump right in. Today's explainer is all about decoding what we call magic words. We're going to explore exactly how specific, highly intentional linguistic triggers can take a prospect from a state of total hesitation right into making a clear, confident decision. And more importantly, we'll look at how to bake these triggers right into the Sales Booster OS framework so it becomes second nature. So think about this. Why do perfectly good deals just suddenly stall? I mean, we've all been there, right? You deliver a brilliant pitch, the product is a perfect match, and then, boom. The prospect throws up a massive wall. They go completely quiet, hit you with the classic, I need to think about it, and you're just left sitting there wondering what on earth went wrong. Well, the truth is, a lot of these conversations don't fail because your idea is weak. They fail because our default, improvised, everyday language actually creates subconscious friction. Let me give you a prime example of this from Phil M. Jones. Asking a totally standard scripted question like, "What questions do you have?" seems perfectly harmless, doesn't it? But psychologically, it instantly creates defensiveness because it implies the buyer should be confused or should have questions. Instead, look at the right side. Ask, how open-minded would you be? This specific combination of magic words instantly opens doors. It completely drops the pressure and appeals directly to their self-image as a reasonable, flexible person. But actually, scratch that. Before we can even start changing the words coming out of our mouths, we have to look inward. Before dealing with a buyer's external resistance, we have to deal with our own internal friction. Maxwell Maltz calls this the servo mechanism. Basically, it's your subconscious operating system. If your own self-image expects rejection, your servo mechanism is going to make you stumble over your words or hesitate when it counts the most. So, to project real confidence, you've got to program your own mind to expect success first. Okay, so once our own mindset is dialed in, we have to truly understand the buyer's mindset. Blair Warren hits the nail on the head here. Buyers decide emotionally first, always. To pull ourselves out of that high-pressure pitch dynamic, we have to recognize these core human needs. If the words you use can validate their fears and encourage their dreams, you're going to build a deep bond of trust almost instantly. Which brings us to a really critical question you need to ask yourself. When you're in front of a client, are you painting a vivid picture of a better future, or are you just listing off features? If we just dump logic, specs, and product details on a prospect, we literally trigger their natural psychological resistance. People don't buy features, guys. They buy the better version of themselves that your product unlocks. Section 1. Vocabulary of friction versus flow. This is based on Jose Silva's positive vocabulary, and it beautifully illustrates how swapping just one high-resistance word can totally cleanse the friction out of a conversation. Look at words like cost, try, or but. To the human brain, those words subconsciously signal risk, failure, or an argument. But if you just swap cost for investment, or trade a combative but for a collaborative agree, you fundamentally shift the emotional temperature of the room. It's a tiny, tiny tweak, but the impact is absolutely massive. Section 2. Discovery triggers. Uncovering the real problem. Moving into the discovery phase, saying something like, "Hey, I'm calling to sell you our new platform," just builds a brick wall instantly. But check out this phrase on the right from Phil M. Jones. "I'm not sure if it's for you, but." Using this trigger acts like a psychological pressure release valve. You're literally giving them an out, which paradoxically makes the buyer feel totally safe to actually lean in and listen to your next sentence. Here's another absolute game changer. When you get hit with an objection like, "I just don't have the time," the amateur instinct is to argue. We want to say, "Well, actually, let me explain why you do have the time." Don't do that. Replace that defensive reflex with 4 simple words. What makes you say that? This sets up a strategic pause and pivot. You're essentially forcing the buyer to fill the awkward silence with what's actually bothering them. And to keep this whole discovery phase feeling incredibly low pressure, Mike Weinberg suggests dropping the corporate jargon entirely for these 3 words: visit, fit, and value. Instead of scheduling a consultation to present our synergies, which just screams pitch, you ask if you can visit to see if there's a fit and if you can actually add value. It immediately reframes the whole interaction as a mutual collaboration. Section 3. Future pacing and closing triggers. Now this is where it gets really fun. The phrase, "just imagine," is a remarkably powerful psychological trigger. The human brain literally cannot help but create a mental image when it hears those words. By asking your prospect to just imagine their situation in 6 months, you bypass all their logical, critical defenses and paint an incredibly vivid, emotional picture of success, where they already own and benefit from your solution. Of course, when it's time to actually close, you're going to hit barriers. Getting dragged into an argument over a price tag or specific feature is a trap. Instead, try Zig Ziglar's suppose test. You just ask, suppose that condition didn't exist. Would you then invest? It's brilliant because it takes you out of a hostile negotiation and puts you into a hypothetical scenario, allowing you to isolate that final barrier and see if it's a genuine deal breaker or just a smokescreen.
If they're still throwing up objections, you flow right into Ziglar's isolate and validate method. It's a precise 1-2-3 combo. First, ask, is there any other reason preventing you from moving forward? Second, just wait for them to say no. And third, validate it. So if this specific issue was resolved, you'd buy today? This corners the real objection cleanly, so you can stop playing defense and start solving the problem together, side by side.
Section 4. The Sales Booster Operating System. Now, to make sure these aren't just isolated parlor tricks, we have to integrate them into a professional framework, like Ruth Farrington's S3 method. This grounds all those psychological triggers into a real workflow. Step 1, you see the client by uncovering their hidden emotional drivers. Step 2, you solve by using your magic words to gather data completely friction-free. And step 3, you satisfy by delivering a targeted solution. It's an entire system built on empathy rather than pushiness. But look, even with the best system, you're going to run into heavily indecisive clients. Pushing aggressively for a close almost always backfires here. So, we borrow from Ryan Serhant's framework, push, pull, persist. For those clients riding the fence, you gently prod them forward, then you tactically pull the offer away, maybe warning them that the timeline is closing, to create a reality check. And finally, you gracefully persist using the exact low-resistance vocabulary we talked about earlier. To really make this your default setting, you need to build out these essential OS habits from the Matrix sequence. You've got to do your pre-call mental rehearsal to keep that servo mechanism in check. You absolutely must qualify early to protect your time. Tie every single feature strictly to a problem the buyer explicitly told you about. Keep the desire for the solution separate from the actual price negotiation. And above all, treat objections as pure data to guide your next question, not as dead ends. And I think this quote really anchors the whole concept for us. You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. Mastering these magic words is not about being manipulative or tricky. Ultimately, it's about leadership, it's about empathy, and it's about service. It's about getting your own ego out of the way so you can genuinely serve the person sitting across from you. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought today. As you reflect on everything we've covered in this explainer, what is the one word you are going to change in your very next conversation to make your buyer feel completely safe? I challenge you to deploy just one of these linguistic triggers tomorrow. Maybe try just imagine or swap cost for investment, and just watch how fast the resistance melts away. Thanks for hanging out with me, and go have some better conversations.